What price freedom and how low a bar do we now set for it in our country? So I just thought I'd do a very quick video this evening, just reflecting on the press conference earlier this evening with Boris Johnson, who looked like death and sounded like death warmed up to me, and those two scientists who, let's just call them those two scientists. But if I never see their faces ever again, it won't come a day too soon, put it that way. Anyway, I'd heard a little bit this afternoon about the roadmap out of lockdown. And I thought, okay, this sounds a little bit more promising than I would have expected. But I wanted to watch and listen myself. So I actually tuned in to the BBC. The BBC that I never ever watch anymore, because I find it to be nothing more than a spreader of poison and propaganda. But I thought, no, I'll watch it because I like to look into their eyes, what they're saying. I like to listen carefully to what they're saying. It's the best way of finding out information firsthand. Don't rely on the media, the lying media. Just watch what he says or doesn't say. Watch what they say or don't say. And it was very interesting. And pretty soon, my vague optimism gave way to a familiar sense of deflation, really, I guess. And a sense again of thinking, why do I ever let myself become optimistic? And don't get me wrong, I'm not on a massive downer or anything like that at the moment. I just think it kind of reinforces my belief, really, that an optimism based on nothing more than optimism itself is quite naive. And it's important that I don't fall into that trap too often myself. But what it sounded like to me was effectively was an exchange between the government and its citizens, an exchange of, we can give you some degree of normality back, pretty unspecified to what that would be. But in exchange, they're asking us to do quite a lot for the privilege of having a life looking like something like the old normal. I mean, unless you're very, very incredibly naive, you'll understand that we're never getting back what we had. But if we're going to get something amounting to what looks like a level of freedom better than we have now, then like I say, it appears to me to be quite a high price that we're going to have to pay for that. Coercement into a vaccination program, continued mass testing, continued mask wearing, and no real announcement, information on when that's going to stop, and willingness to participate in a health passport scheme, certainly for international travel. When the question was asked regarding domestic use, it was kind of battered away. A conversation needs to be had about that, which to me says, yes, that will ultimately be the course of action. I think a good rule of thumb for what's happening at the moment is whatever you conceive of as the worst case scenario is what will happen. Now, the other aspect to this as well is, you've heard the phrase jam tomorrow, always jam tomorrow. So, despite the much improved statistics relating to the virus, even though, what I think about I think that the approach that we've taken has been severely misguided, to put it lightly, the word misguided. But even taking into account the fact that the death rate's coming right down, the infection rate's falling, and all the rest of that, jam tomorrow, okay, in a few weeks we can start the process of returning to something looking vaguely like normal, with many caveats thrown in there, and lots of room for manoeuvre, for decisions to be altered, for dates to be pushed back. So that's what we're dealing with. Effectively, it's more psychological trickery, I would argue. there's not much for me to be optimistic about. However, I know that many people will be optimistic. I mean, let's not forget, in a few weeks, we're allowed to meet up with a friend outside, sit on a park bench and have a coffee. So I guess that's quite a good reason to get excited for. Okay, I'll try and be optimistic about that. But it's, in all seriousness, this is what happens when you condition a population to look upon their freedom as selfish. They will then become excited with the little scraps of meat that you throw their way, which means that then if you ask them to do something that in ordinary times they wouldn't have considered even in their, remotely, then they'll do it to get back something that looks like what they once had. And this is the this is the environment in which we're now in. I think the government know that as well. And they're able to back it up by saying they're leading the world, or one of the certainly leading countries in the world with the vaccine rollout, which is going to do their reputation, no harm or good, and it's probably putting them in a real position of strength. They've probably won back round a lot of people, because there may be this sense now amongst many people that things are going to go back to normal. But if you've been paying attention, this is the thing, have you been paying attention? Really pay attention to what they're saying. I remember when I first heard the phrase, the new normal, that was when the penny dropped for me. I thought, why are they saying that, the new normal? That sounds to me quite radically different. And I think it was ever since then, really, that I realised what was going on and that our world was never going to go back. And I think I knew there and then that I'd lived through the period in my life where I'd had maximum freedom and liberty, and we were never going to go back there. So for anyone who's really paying attention, then obviously everyone has different opinions on this, and I'm always happy to engage in any debate, and I understand why some others may feel optimistic, but I just look at recent precedent, to look at everything that's happened this year. I look at how 3 weeks to flatten the curve has turned into 11 months later. Here we still are in full lockdown, which is carrying on to some degree till at least the 21st of June. And for that reason alone, that's reason enough for me not to be optimistic. And I certainly don't feel it's a reason to be optimistic to have made, say 3 months from now, we have some restrictions lifted. Okay, so that might be a slightly better situation than we're in right now. But compared to what we had, it's not a reason to celebrate at all. So, again, I use the word a lot, perspective. It's important to keep in perspective what we now have and what we're willing to accept compared to what we did have, and also perspective when it comes to that old debate, what's more important, freedom or security? And is security ultimately just an illusion, which freedom isn't? So there we go, that's my thoughts. What did you think? And what do you think is the path forward? Are you feeling optimistic or pessimistic, or do you just accept it for what it is now? Love to hear from you. So, okay, over and out. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.